can go very smoothly, or it can be very traumatic for folks at multiple organization levels in your company. And it's one of the things you really need to practice as an organization. And many people.
You're listening to Rise and Shine, your business tech boost with me, Charly Leetham. I have been in technology for over 40 years, and I've been running Ask Charly Leetham for nearly 2 decades. People hire me so that they can do what they do best, run their businesses, while I handle the tech that keeps things running. This podcast doesn't just give you practical advice you can actually, let me try that again. This podcast gives you practical advice you can actually use. Straight talk about what works and what doesn't. Today's guest brings a rare combination of deep technical expertise and legal know-how to one of the most critical challenges facing defence contractors right now, cybersecurity compliance. With over 30 years in the field, 50 patents and recognition, or 50 plus patents, I should say, and recognition in the NC State ECE Hall of Fame, he helps companies navigate the complex world of CMMC, DFARS and federal cybersecurity requirements. Stephen, welcome to the show, and I really hope we're going to get into what some of those jargons mean today. I'm sitting there reading it out going, oh yeah, this is great. This throws me back to my corporate days.
If I explain all those acronyms, then the guys with the dark sunglasses will have to come visit you. But anyway,
I could tell you, but then I'd have to silence you. Yeah, I get it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what some of that stuff actually means, the stuff that you can tell us what it means.
Sure. So I've done a number of things over my career. But in my background, I'm originally trained as an electrical engineer, went on, did my PhD in computer engineering, and then for some reason decided to go to law school. So I'm a practicing cybersecurity attorney in the United States, and my focus there is on particularly defense subcontractors. Cybersecurity attorney roles apply to companies in a lot of different industries, not just defense, but defense is particularly interesting at the moment because in addition to the normal national security kind of concerns that you have in that industry, there's some regulations that have changed that increase the legal risk for the contractors in that space. So it's not just you may run into some technical issue where you've exposed some information you shouldn't have, but doing that it can cause you all sorts of legal problems beyond the consequences of what you actually did. By that I mean it's kind of symptomatic of a lot of industries where the consequences of cybersecurity problems, privacy hacks, and so forth turn into something much more serious than they used to be. Way back in the day when the internet first started out, people were much more casual about what information they put out there. But these days, lots of companies are out of business if their internet is down or if their infrastructure is down, and that's sort of a reflection of how important it is. But it gets to be not just consequences for the company, but the information the companies handle is important, not just to the company, but to their suppliers, to their customers, to their clients, and so forth. So managing that information is a much more serious problem and a challenge for a lot of companies than a lot of their procedures really qualify them for.
Okay.
So, just to give some more examples, in most firms, if you've got, if you're a publicly listed company, then there are reporting requirements through, in the US, it would be Sarbanes-Oxley, that you have to take seriously the cybersecurity in your firm. And if you have events where you get hacked, then you've got to make disclosures and reparations and so forth. And the specific laws vary state by state, but that's sort of a general example of how things sort of ratchet up to legal consequences beyond the immediate technical issue of whether there was a firewall penetration or a virus or whatever the particular issue was. And for the defense contractors, the regulations in the DFARS, which is the Defense Acquisition Regulations, and the Cybersecurity Maturity Certification Program, the CMMC, that basically combines to require the defense contractors to certify that they are meeting the level of proficiency in cybersecurity procedures that they are supposed to meet. And if they don't meet that, then they're essentially making some false claim to the government, and that carries a lot of significant financial consequences. So they could essentially be put out of business if they get this wrong. So it's very serious. So there's a lot of attention on how to get the processes right, and for a commercial organization, it's a real challenge, because then you have to deal with balancing. Perfect security is you write once and read never. Right? You make something impenetrable, but then it's completely unusable, and it tends to be expensive as well. So how do you balance that in a way where you don't open yourself up to all sorts of legal issues where you decided that something wasn't economically efficient, but that led to a weakness in your procedures that caused the problem. So it's a sort of balancing act that companies need to take to work through their procedures and their compliance activities and documentation.
Okay, so just before we sort of jump into that, I don't know if people have noticed, but Stephen's got an accent very much like mine. You are an Australian by birth, I understand.
Yes, I come from the land of Vegemite. Actually, up in Queensland, actually the land of Bundaberg rum. So, so it's been a long tangled story, but originally from Australia. When I go back, people tend to tell me I have a very American accent now. I was going to say, I can
sort of hear, because when we were talking just before we came on, and you mentioned you spent a little bit of time in England, and I can sort of hear that impact as well. I mean, some Australians do have a British type accent anyway, but I can sort of hear it, and then I hear the American, and then I hear the Australian. But yeah, I can imagine you get a lot of stick for coming back when you come back.
It was quite funny working in the UK, because I finished college in Australia and went to work in the UK. I was working with a lot of Europeans as well later on. I went to the UK, I went to work in the US, and then I went to work in Belgium for a while, and then came back to the US. And working for the French and the Belgians, it was interesting, because I was being a native English speaker, correcting their grammar, and it was an interesting role. After working for the
I can imagine. I can absolutely imagine. Well, it sounds like it's been an interesting career. From what I understand, from what you told me before, you're actually in Atlanta right now, which I understand is a beautiful part of that country. So I'm a little jealous. I haven't been there. I've been to a couple of places in the US, but not Atlanta.
Well, if you're in the US, the joke is that if you're flying, you're probably going to go through Atlanta Airport. It's the busiest airport in the world.
There you go.
So the joke is, when you die, you're going to go through there on your way to wherever you're going.
That's a good joke. Alrighty, so look, I just want to sort of dig into this a little further, because you're talking about cybersecurity. You obviously have a specific focus on defence contractors. My audience is more small businesses and such, and I know that a lot of the things that you're talking about for defence contractors still apply to small businesses. There's still things that small businesses really need to take a lot more seriously than I think we do. And you hit a really good point there. Is like, you can make it so strong it's impenetrable. My take on that is there's a cost associated with doing it, and you've got to balance everything else. So can we sort of have that discussion here? Like, what are you seeing in terms of what you need to do with your defence people, and what should small businesses be considering? You're obviously going to have the US focus, but let's see if we can pull it into an Australian focus as well.
Yeah, let me back up a little bit and position it as kind of this trend towards the legalization of cybersecurity issues. Because although my focus is on defense subcontractors, technically or legally, those same rules apply to any government contractor in the US. If you are saying that you comply in your contracts to some security standard and you don't, that's a false claim, a lie to the government. The Department of Justice has started suing companies for this, and the penalties are quite severe. It could be $1 million per lie, per false claim, and it could get you blacklisted from business with the government. It can have all sorts of other consequences, including jail time for company executives. So it's quite serious, and it affects more than the defense contractors. The defense contractors are the initial target, but I would imagine that this will roll out to lots of non-defense contractors that deal with government work. So I think that trend is going to happen in other countries as well. Sort of generally, geopolitically, you see this trend away from globalization towards a little more balkanization, a little more concern for countries' national interests. So I think you're going to see that applying in Australia and other countries as well, an increasing legalization of the consequences of security violations or privacy violations. Strictly speaking, security and privacy are not exactly the same thing, but they tend to get wrapped together in the ways companies respond to them. It tends to be the same kinds of constraints in terms of who can access what and what they can do with it, in the same kind of very similar kinds of legal consequences when things get disclosed.
Do you see this rolling out to organisations that don't deal with government? These sorts of requirements actually being pushed down and out into the various industries?
I do. I think you're going to see it more and more. There's already some ISO standards around information security that roll up through the auditing of company records. It sort of goes back to the Sarbanes-Oxley stuff, which is probably 15, 20 years old now. But this is sort of becoming increasingly detailed technical work that the general auditing firms get more and more involved in. So it's not purely a technology issue, it's more and more an accounting compliance issue for companies outside of defense. The scope of things they have to report on now is only going to increase as time goes on. It's not a static target. The ISO standards are broadly applicable outside the US, and generally the accounting rules tend to be pretty aligned across other countries as well. So
now,
yes, it's right.
Yeah. Well, you actually mentioned privacy, and you said they're two different things. Cybersecurity and privacy are two different things. I do see them as different sides of the same coin. A lot of our cybersecurity practices, to my mind, are around protecting our clients' privacy and protecting the privacy of what we're doing, or the information that we're collecting. So I do see why they sort of are collected together. Do you want to talk a little bit about the privacy issues and cybersecurity and how they tie together and what you're seeing? Is that a good topic to talk about here?
Sure. So it depends a little on your definition. Some people conflate the two. Generally, I think of security and cybersecurity going back to the CIA triad. So confidentiality, integrity, availability, that sort of defining what security is all around. Privacy, you may think of as it's the confidentiality piece out of there. So there is some overlap. But legally speaking, you get a bunch of different information privacy rights around the type of information that's being protected. So the easy example in the US would be the HIPAA regulations around health information, medical records, things like that. It gives you a certain set of privacy concerns around that type of information. Globally, there's the GDPR regulations coming out of Europe that give European citizens specific privacy rights to correct information errors in records and in some circumstances request that information be deleted and so forth. And that's, the GDPR has been influential in a number of countries. It's not, well, some states have followed it in the US. A number of states have their own regulations. I haven't followed things that closely in Australia. I believe they would follow the GDPR, just generally given the
yeah, we have the Australian privacy principles, which are different. There's similarities, they're different. A lot of our companies, though, we're just advising them, like if someone comes to me and says, I want to put this information up on the internet, it's like, well, you need to comply with the GDPR because you could have someone from the EU looking at that information, visiting your website, and you would automatically fall under that banner.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting area that gets into more than just protecting your systems. It really is a problem around the data you manage as well. Because a lot of cybersecurity tends to worry about these internal processes. You need to keep your systems up to date. And the focus is on not getting the systems penetrated, and firewall rules and things like that. But particularly with these AI systems, you've got to worry about the data and what data was the AI system trained on, and is that data updated? Was that data biased? Is that data has that been influenced with some sort of data poisoning or deep fakes or even data suppression that masks the data set? And those kinds of things are very difficult to track unless you've really got access to the data, unless you can get some contractual certifications from the AI providers, which good luck getting that. Most of them are providing tools on a best efforts basis, right? Sort of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I mean, AI at the moment, that type of AI at the moment is really, it reminds me of the good old days of the internet. It's the Wild West of this is a new technology and we're just throwing stuff at it. But that does lead me to a good like a question that sort of hits me. In fact, there's two or three questions that come out of that. You mentioned data poisoning and data suppression. I think that's a really, really good one to discuss. I know that some people have reported, and I can only say they've reported it because I haven't seen it myself, going and asking AI's question and the AI's saying, oh no, we're not allowed to answer that, or we've got no information on that. Can we just sort of talk a little bit about that and what that means and what you mean by data suppression and data poisoning and what the implications for businesses are when we're talking about this stuff?
Yeah, so that was actually the subject of my last book that's out on Amazon. So Securing Your Data Supply Chain is the book. So there's the three topics: data suppression, deepfakes, and data poisoning. all become important or more important in the context of AI. So data poisoning is where you are specifically trying to inject misleading data into the data that you're using to train some AI system. Deepfakes are when you are trying to create something that is not truthful. So you are creating some maybe satire clip that takes some famous person's image and redirects it with words they never spoke and makes some embarrassing remarks or whatever. And data suppression is frankly censorship. So there are a range of things there, from blocking internet access, and there are countries that have done that. You can think of the Great Firewall of China, if you like, as one large-scale, well-known example. But it can be much more nuanced, where, for example, there are companies that are in the business of enhancing reputation for peoples and companies, where they try to enhance certain information in the search results and suppress other information down the search results, right? So it can be a lot more nuanced as to what gets suppressed. It's not just necessarily a complete blockage, but who scrolls through to page 10 on your Google results, right? or your Bing results, or whatever other search engine you prefer. So yeah,
how do you, as a person who is using this information for your business or using these tools for your business, know or determine whether any of this is occurring? Is that even possible?
It's yes and no. So there is a sort of cat and mouse game of between cybersecurity defenses and attacks. There's a similar sort of cat and mouse game in the AI space, where you're trying to detect deepfakes and things like this using other AI systems. But then the folks generating them have adversarial AI systems they train against, and so that's a continuing battle. I suspect that at the end of the day, you're going to need to have contractual and legal obligations on what the data contents are, in the same way as these CMCC regulations are on cybersecurity. You're going to want attestations from your data sources that the data is valid, or at least some contractual obligations in terms of dealing with problems. Detecting that it's happened, yes, you can try and tee up some AI system to detect problems, but that, as I said, that's requires a level of sophistication, and it doesn't guarantee good results. You may be better off just trying to use multiple different systems and, cross-checking or fact-checking with independent sources. It's probably the simplest and easiest thing. Part of this interference actually with the systems actually goes under the efforts of folks to provide some ethical rails on these AI systems. So you try to flag when people ask for objectionable information, or try to give a socially acceptable answer that is not going to offend somebody. So lots of those things
I'm just
manipulate the AI in various ways that distort its truth, right? And that's why you have folks like Elon Musk saying that they're trying to make Grok become a perpetually truth-seeking machine, and that was his distinction from some of the other AI systems out there. I have no idea how successful he is or is going to be on that, but it's a one way that some of these systems can distinguish each other.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I know because I use it a lot to do research. I use it a lot to find myself references to things and develop. It's a thought partner for me. And even yesterday, I was working on something, and I said I need this, and it just gave me all this information. I went, wow, that's really good. Where did you get that from? Quote me your sources. Well, I can't. That's just stuff that I have pulled together from the data I was trained with. And I immediately went, that's a problem. That's a real problem, because there's nothing there I can point to when someone says to me, verify your sources, make sure your sources are, I can't, because the source was an AI that says, well, I just inferred that from the data that was fed to me. And it was an inference.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, these systems hallucinate. You can.
I love that term, by the way, hallucination.
Yeah, if you run it off a much more constrained set of your own documents, that tends to help minimize some things compared to these RAG systems that just pull from the general sewer of the internet. You could get almost anything kind of. But yeah. I think the thing to do is not just compare answers from multiple systems, but if you recognize that these systems all have a bias to try and please you, they are trying to give you an answer that they think most people want to hear, and that's generally going to be a positive answer that is something that sounds plausible. And one of the ways you can fight back against that is to actually take that answer and put it into another system and say, give me a brutally honest critique of this. What's really wrong? What do you really, what needs to be challenged in here? Right? So asks another one for a critique, not just for the same questions. And so that kind of thing where you get, where you can kind of circumnavigate around to get to the truth of things is better than just asking the same question over and over again. These systems are great for an initial trial, but then to really get to the heart of the matter, you've got to...
It all broke down, yeah. So I've been quite contrarian about it and argued with them, and they've changed their position. They've actually come back and said, no, you are entirely correct, and here's my new thoughts on the matter, because I've argued with it.
Yeah, so they try to please you. They're trying to give you the answer they think you want to hear. And sometimes that's a useful answer, and sometimes it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amusing thing. So is there like implications on cybersecurity and AI in that respect?
Yes. So AI gets pitched as being not so much a labor-saving device, which other forms of automation were, but as a intellectual accelerator, if you like. But that can accelerate both good thoughts and bad. So you can have people using it to accelerate their hacking of your system, as well as using it to bolster your pattern recognition and penetration detection, for example. So it cuts both ways.
Right, and how would a business then, I don't even know if you could protect against it, except, admit you're using it and then make sure you're verifying everything. Is there something around this?
No, I think all you can do is make your best efforts on at the system layer and the pieces that you control, and harden that as best you can. You'll never get it perfect, but you can make yourself a much less attractive person, a target, than the person next door. It's the old joke about the two guys in the woods and the bear. Putting my shoes on, I don't have to outrun the bear, I've just got to outrun me. Right, so you make yourself a less attractive target. I mean, you're still going to be a target because there's still, there's two types of companies: the ones that have been hacked, and the ones that are going to be hacked. You just want to stay in the other category as long as you can. Eventually, these things, if you make the system layers hard enough, the penetration attacks work up into the people layer, into the wetware, and you get more and more sophisticated social engineering, which is not something you can protect with hardware and systems. It's training your people to be suspicious and be critical about the information they take in. And you're seeing more and more of that in compliance work with training exercises on phishing and so forth becoming much more common for many organizations.
So phishing attacks are actually quite common, aren't they? I mean, I think that's a natural flow on the fact that systems are becoming more difficult to hack. Maybe.
Yeah, and it's so much easier just to send an email, like, or an email or a text or even other things. You can get them tied into QR codes and all sorts of things these days. So yes, it's the harder you make the system level activities, the more people work around the systems and try to find their way in that way. So it's how you harden the people that's the bigger challenge.
Okay. So just sort of flowing on from that, are you seeing organisations are still resistant to adopting the necessary security technologies and practices? Are they getting better at it? And what's the things that you're seeing most of all?
The bigger organizations have the wherewithal to make quite significant progress in terms of processes and internal systems. The real challenge is as you get down to smaller enterprises, it's difficult to maintain the level of expertise in the organization to do that kind of work. And so that's not just an issue for cybersecurity and internal systems, it's just a general IT problem for smaller companies. They've got to think about what's the biggest bang for the buck for the company. Is it spending their money on IT systems, or is it building a better product? And generally the argument goes, I'd rather spend the money on getting a better product and keeping my customers happy and pushing all my software up into the cloud on some other service provider, which is fine to a certain extent. Many of those service providers are, they're in the business of providing a service, so they generally take that quite seriously and have more significant staff available to keep their systems up to date, to have better firewalls, better protection, and so forth. But still, there's a boundary. There's a difference between accountability and responsibility. When things go wrong, you can outsource a certain amount, but at the end of the day, when things break, it's your company and your customers that are put out by this outage. And so how are you going to deal with that? And so maybe that's the simplest way for small businesses to think about it, is think of it as any other type of failure or availability. And if there's a software service that you're relying on and they get hacked, what's your response going to be? Do you have a disaster recovery plan that gets you back into business? And what's your recovery time? What's your recovery point going to be? If you think of it in those terms, that's a little more tractable to a small-scale business. You can think about what the costs, what it's going to take to take your records from one system, move it somewhere else, and get back up and running. That's sort of the bottom line economic costs, and then you've got to worry about the other regulatory or legal fallout that may come as well. Because if you've had some privacy violation or other contractual violations associated with the outage, then you may have to do disclosures to customers, to government agencies, and so forth. So, a lot of a bit of preparation on that stuff can reduce a whole lot of anxiety when it really happens.
Correct. Yeah. So is there you mentioned using third-party providers, and pretty much every business these days outsources their data storage, their data processing to another organisation. Is there anything that businesses need to watch out for or be looking for in contracts that would be red flags for them?
So the usual challenge with these is you don't have a lot of, if you're using a public service provider, you don't have a lot of negotiating room as a client in terms of changing the terms of that contract. So they're doing a one-size-fits-all contract that has to suit all comers. So they're going to make that contract that protects them and pushes as much back on you if it's out of their control. And so the thing really is to be aware of that, that they will keep their systems up to date, but you as the user still have a lot of responsibility to make sure you've got them configured correctly and manage that configuration so that it's up to date and backed up and yada, yada, yada. So you still got to have your processes in place and have them set up with the appropriate governance for your industry, your business, so that you can maintain operations despite what's happening with these other providers. I mean, some of the, if you're a larger company, they may entertain doing a custom contract for you, but then you're still got to negotiate that, and do you really know what you're going to get from it?
Yeah.
I mean, even large governments trying to negotiate government level services have challenges because there's practical limitations on what those companies can do.
So I guess one of the things that I look for when I'm looking at my contracts and looking at providers is what sort of licenses you're providing them when you're uploading your content to them. So image sharing sites was one of the best ones that I had in the early days of the internet. It was like, you upload your images here and you are granting us a royalty-free, non-expiring lifetime license to use your image however we deem fit. And there is that classic example, that classic case of the woman who took across the Qantas wing, the wing of the Qantas plane with the Qantas logo on it, and Qantas used that as a promotional item and didn't pay her a single red cent because it was uploaded publicly. So they're the sorts of things I'd be looking for. Is there anything like that in those sorts of contracts that you'd go, look, this should be a non-negotiable for you? If you're seeing this in a contract, this isn't the provider for you.
Yes, you've got both that and the privacy terms. The other thing that you would want to look at to make sure that they are suitable for the jurisdiction you're in and the types of clients you're dealing with. And the other thing you can do is encrypt your data so that it's not stored in the clear or transmitted in the clear. And usually the big service providers provide you mechanisms to support that, but it still takes some effort on your part to actually make that work. And not become a burdensome exercise on your side. I mean, there are efforts as well towards more confidential computing, where it's actually preserves confidentiality through the computation, either through special encoding of the data or through trusted execution engines, where the cloud provider doesn't have access to that particular part of memory. But those things are kind of specialized. There is a confidential computing consortium that's trying to push the envelope on that stuff, but I don't think it's certainly gotten beyond research, at least in some areas, but it's not widely deployed. It's if you're talking about specialized compute resource hardware, that's going to be a more expensive environment to exist in. But that's the sort of thing.
Sorry, you actually mentioned there where the jurisdiction of the data and the jurisdiction of where it's stored. Is that something that businesses need to be cognizant of where is their data being stored, in which country?
Absolutely, yes. You can see this in the GDPR that may be familiar to most folks, where generally that if you have data on European citizens, the EU would prefer that it was stored in some repository in the EU. There have been at various times safe harbors that let you do it elsewhere, but that's kind of an uphill battle that they're going against. And the same applies for some other countries. Several countries in Africa, and I believe China, have similar regulations based on the GDPR that tend to want to have local storage of their national data.
So the other side to that coin, of course, they don't want your data stored in a jurisdiction where they don't have strong privacy laws and they don't have strong copyright or the legalities around them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. It's, or at least you could try to find such a jurisdiction and hope that protects you from other things. But then such jurisdictions tend to also have other problems. So you have the challenge of protecting the data against both nefarious actors and also state actors and legal processes. So if you've got a data stored in a particular country, then the legal processes in that country can probably get to that data. So if that's important to you or your clients, you need to be aware about what data you're storing where. So if you have personal information on citizens, if you have information that is of national security or whatever, it's got to stay in particular places. And so, most of the big cloud providers have means to let you direct traffic towards particular regions.
They do now. For a long while they didn't, but they do now. Yeah.
Whether they have the regions you need, that's another question. Yeah.
We also understand, like with the GDPR, I actually have a client who has interpreted that requirement that they can't. So their client, my client's client, has interpreted the requirement as no, you can't deal with any other organisation outside of the EU. So their hosting provider, we actually had to specifically go and find a hosting provider that only operated in the EU, did not have a US or Australian or UK head company, because their whole thing was no, it's going to breach the EU GDPR requirements. That's been a really challenging one for me.
Yeah. Yep. There are, there's the rules, and you can find competent attorneys who'll interpret the rules, and then there's what your client actually says they're going to do, because their internal counsel said that's the law, and we want to be back here, well away from whatever the boundary is.
Correct. It doesn't matter what your attorneys say. If they say this is what we want, then that's what you're going to give them.
Okay, you want that? It's going to cost you this, but we'll do that. Yeah, that's what you can do.
So I guess a question that comes up from all of this is, if you could wave a magic wand and get, every defence contractor, but businesses in general, to do one thing differently tomorrow, what would that be? I
think just focusing on the data governance is the thing that is perhaps misunderstood or misaligned in most companies still today. There's certainly with Sarbanes-Oxley and all of these other process improvements, there's been a lot of attention given to basic cybersecurity processes, antivirus, get your firewalls up, the training on phishing and these kinds of process enhancements to get your people hardened. But still, the social engineering piece and the data that your companies manage, this is a area that people just aren't used to thinking critically about where they get their information from and what they should rely on. And the more you look around these days with AI, with deep fakes, with data suppression, it's a problem area. So just paying more attention to that in terms of your, not just IT governance, but specifically data governance. What data do you take in, not just as an API feed, but where do you get your information, your market data, your customer data? How sure are you that it really reflects reality? Even government data statistics. So we have various government statistics on employment and economic activity that's very important to a lot of companies to plan their activities. But those data is subject to revisions. It comes out and there's more people or less people were employed than we thought were employed last month, and it's 50% off from what we thought it was 12 months ago. So there can be a huge range on some of this data. And so if you're used to dealing with data analytics and data quality and doing data integrity checks, that's one thing, but most business executives aren't. And so that level of data quality checking, most business executives have a fair amount of business acumen and things have to pass the smell test or whatever, but there have been deep fake attacks that have targeted corporate executives that have led to significant losses. So it's becoming a real thing where you really need to be concerned about not just verifying phishing emails and things like that, but all of the data you're coming in. You can't just respond immediately. You've got to cross-check and validate that. You've got to have some process in mind about how you're going to validate that data. And that's, I think, becoming increasingly important.
Okay, now you mentioned that you had a book about data poisoning, governance, all of that. Do you want to? I think that sounds like something that people need to be reading. Would you recommend that book to people as a good guideline? What would you recommend?
Yes, that's probably the best one I know. The book is Securing Your Data Supply Chain. If you search for it on Amazon, you should find it, or you can look on my website, www.drstephenawright.com/author. You'll find a list of my books under there. That's the best one I know of. There are others that talk about different aspects of it. There are folks that will go into much more gory detail about how the internet gets terminated during acts of war and things like that in terms of data suppression. There are folks that will give you more detail on deep fakes and what a problem that is from a research perspective. But in terms of data governance and how to start to think about these problems in the data as being another form of attack, how you threat model those things, that's kind of the focus of this book. Just trying to build awareness on that stuff.
So I'm going to put all your links into the show notes here. Where can people connect with you? Are you on social media? Are you on any specific platform?
So I'm on LinkedIn and X. That's the two main ones that I follow. There's too many social media things to follow.
Look, it's good. Just focus on one or two. It's so much easier. You don't have to worry about it. Awesome. Look, I'll put all that in the show notes. Is there something that you would want people out of this conversation, out of our talk today, to take away with them and to just keep front of mind all the time?
Yes. So cybersecurity is more than just an IT problem. It's a business problem. It's a legal problem. It's a social problem. and yes, you can fix the technology and make that harder, but that won't fix all of the other dimensions. And so that's going to take a longer time and a lot more effort from people. And so that's where I'm glad you're helping to get your clients and listeners educated on some of these things. It's
thank you.
It's an important topic.
It really is. And as you said, the compliance issues are massive. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing things come through where now you must do this and you will do this. And I'm seeing our government particularly, becoming very stringent and very strict on what we can and can't do, and what they think they can do as a result of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming much more of it's no longer just an IT problem. It's becoming a business problem with a contractual issue or potentially a regulatory or other legal issue, depending on the industry and the jurisdiction you're in. So just as a business person, just reframing it that way in your mind is an important step. Because until you do that, if you keep pushing it onto the IT folks, they'll do their best, but you're going to get blindsided by some other business or legal issue that's going to cause you a whole world of heartache that you didn't really want to know about.
I think you're entirely correct there.
You just not my particular expertise in cybersecurity, but there are folks that deal with incident response and that kind of thing. It's it can go very smoothly, or it can be very traumatic for folks at multiple organization levels in your company. And it's one of the things you really need to practice as an organization. And many people don't or haven't done that. It's kind of an eye-opening exercise if you haven't done it. And I would really encourage your folks to think about picking up some sort of exercise in that area. Because comes the day when you do get hacked, it will be so much less stressful for you. Because otherwise,
I agree. Yeah, take the stress up front. Take the stress now when you can actually deal with it, not when you can't deal with it and you're trying to deal with everything else around it. I agree entirely.
Yeah, take everybody offsite for a couple of days, work through the exercise, buy them all some recreational beverage of your choice at the end of it and recover. And that's still going to be a lot cheaper and a lot more morale building than having to do it for real, and people getting no sleep for multiple days and dealing with folks I'd really rather not talk to. It's.
I agree. Look, Stephen, thank you so much for your time today. Guys, I hope you get a lot out of this. It's such a big topic. It's such a massive, massive topic. And I really hope you take on board at least Stephen's takeaway, if not the other things he's spoken about. If you want to have these sorts of conversations, if you want to know more, if you just want to shoot the breeze and sort of work through them in a friendly, non-confrontational way, I've got my community, askcharlyleetham.locals.com. It is designed for business owners to come and have these conversations with each other, with someone who can actually, you can ping and pick my brain if you want. If you don't want to, that's fine too. I don't mind. But do come across and join me there. Stephen, look, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. What's the other things we've got to do? Oh, yeah. If this has been useful to you, remember to give us a like, please. Maybe share the interview with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you find it when I do more interviews like this. Stephen, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Charly. Appreciate it. Pleasure to be on with you.